Cheers. Coffee. Gotta have coffee. Yeah, I bought a thing. I kind of look like a woodworker now. I've got a little vest, carry stuff, pockets, tools. So I kind of look the part. Anyway, the subject of this video. So for years I've carried a clipboard for drawings, notes, whatever, take it to the lumberyard. But I've always wanted one with the box on the bottom that you can carry pencils and your paper in. And of course the clipboard flips up to get into it. I never wanted one of the aluminum ones. And the wooden ones are kind of pricey for what you get, even on Amazon. So of course, woodworker, I'm going to make one. Now I'm going to make it out of cherry. I've got 1/4-inch cherry stock and 1/4-inch maple I've had for small projects for years. I'll use that wood for it. I'm going to use box joints for the box itself, which would be period correct for mid 19th century all the way up now to the 21st century. Box joints, hence box joints. It's a box. I'm going to use a jig I've not used before. I've had this jig for a while. It's the Rockler Box Joint Jig that allows you to do very precise box joints on the router table. So let me show you the stock and let me show you that jig now. So here's the stock. It's 1/4-inch. It's very accurate 1/4-inch. It's cherry. It's 4 inches wide, thereabouts. And I'll do some glue ups for the bottom and for the clipboard itself. Like I said, I might put a couple of maple stripes in it for some contrasting color. And box joints. So let me show you the jig I'm going to use, and let me go over some issues I had with it when I first opened it up and put it together and set it up on my router table. Here's the jig. It's from Rockler, of course. Rockler Blue, can you tell? It's very simple. It's like a jig you'd make at home for your own shop if you wanted to. It sits on the router table. It clamps into the miter slot, and the fence just moves back and forth in these slots across the router bit. And as you would put a piece of wood in, make your cut, move it over, make your cut, move it over, make your cut. Well, the problem I ran into was the guide rail that came attached to the fence, to the jig, was not a 1/4-inch. It was just a fat 1/4-inch, more than a 1/4-inch, about a 64th or 32nd over. So when you came along and did your cut and moved it over, you had to force it down onto the guide rail because the bit is exactly 1/4-inch. Well, this kit came with 3 more guide rails, another 1/4-inch, a 3/8 1/2. So I measured the 1/4-inch that came as the second one, the spare, and it's dead on 1/4 of an inch. So this one came out, goes into recycling. This one is the one I'm going to use. Now, because this is 1/4-inch fixed, I will make the sides some derivative of 1/4 inches, so 1 1/2, 1 3/4 deep, so the box joints are nice and clean and symmetric all the way around. So the next step is to go ahead and mill the stock, do the glue ups, and then cut the box joints. Little change I had to make to the box joint jig. With the box joint jig in place, I can't reach the adjustment for the router lift. I'm using a Jessam lift. This is obviously made for a Rockler lift where the adjustment is somewhere else. So I drilled a hole, I marked it where I needed to hold it, drilled a hole, so now I can get the lift handle down into the lift drive so I can make the correct height measurements for the bit and whatever. I cut out the stock for the box, and it's 14 inches by 9 1/2. 14 inches gives me the length of the paper and a little bin for the pencils and pens or whatever. And the 9 1/2, because this is 1/4-inch stock, gives me enough room inside for 8 1/2 by 11 paper, 8 1/2 by 8 1/2 wide paper. So I set it all up, got it tuned and everything, and did some practice pieces out of some scrap. And then I finally got it, and then I did it with the cherry, some small pieces of the cherry, and I got the joints I want. Now, when you go through the manual for doing this, there's this bizarro kind of rate letters and numbers and whatever. You see that? Yeah. Do this? Well, I kind of use a lead jig technique. Do one end, flip it, do the other end. Do one end, flip it, do the other one. Do the same thing with the ends. Do one side, flip it, do the other side, flip it, and so on. And it comes out correct, or at least hope it comes out correct. So let me go ahead and get started on these to get the box to the point where I can do a glue up, and then we'll take it from there. Well, there you go. Not tight together, it's just kind of hand put together. So the height of this is 1.5 inches. Plenty of room for stuff to go in there. I maybe have to bolster one end where the hinge is going to be. There'll be a magnetic latch at the other end, typical rare earth magnet and a piece of metal or a screw or something in the top itself. So there we go. And now I have to glue this up and get it nice and make sure it's nice and square. I've decided to use this rather interesting piece of plywood, 1/4 inch ply. It's not quite 1/4 inch for the bottom, but to make it look right, I have to inlet this into the bottom of the frame. So what I'm going to do is go to the router table, and I've got a bit set up where I can cut a rabbet all the way around on the router table. Now, of course, I'm going to have to clean up the corners because of the roundness of the bit. But let's go over the router table, and I'll just hopefully just be real quick. And I'll run it around the router bit, and we'll have most or 99% of the rabbet cut all the way in. Once I get the bottom glued in place, of course, the next step is to make the top. And as I mentioned earlier, I was considering using a couple of species of wood to give it some interest. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a glue up of two or three different species of wood. The only downside to that is it's going to be covered with paper most of the time, and no one's ever going to see it. But onward to the hand tools to clean up the corners and glue this together. It fits. Couple of little errors. Chopping out, I broke off some wood here. I'm gonna have to patch that. Won't be a big deal. But the back fits now. Got to glue it up and continue on to the next step, which we all know is to make the top. and make the final decision of what that layout's going to be like. Onward and upward. So now I've got these pieces of maple and cherry 1/4 inch stock. Now I'm probably going to rip this one down a bit wider than these and then decide what kind of pattern I want to glue up. Joint these and glue them together. So let's get started. Okay, so I've decided on the pattern, kind of like a 1960s race car racing stripes from that period. So now I'm going to glue these up. Yeah, those are going to join very nicely. Glue these up and trim to size to make the actual top for the box. All right, let's do a glue up. Clamps are all set up, got the glue. I got a weight. It's the battery for my lawnmower that's going to sit there to kind of keep some weight on this, so to keep the bowing from happening. And I'll put a piece of polypropylene under that so that the glue won't stick to it. So now, let's open these up a little bit and do a glue up. Now the typical watching paint dry, waiting for glue to dry, maybe go off and watch TV, have a cup of coffee, and then we'll be back. Out of the clamps, it came out really nice. It came out nice and flat. Putting the weight on this really paid off. I got to scrape off the glue and sand it down and then start measuring up and cutting this for the shape that I need to go on the box. Let's get started. Okay, all nice and sanded. That was the 100 grit. I gotta go down to 220 grit when I go to finish it. Looks like this is gonna be the upside. It's got a few little spots here where it's a little rough. So this will be the upside. And now, oops, dropping shit all over the place. So now I gotta pick, it's gonna go like that, obviously. And there'll be some overhang, maybe 1/2 inch overhang here, be fairly flush at this end. And of course, I've got to finish the inside of the box. So let me see about getting some of the stuff inside this box now. What I want to do is I want to put a pencil tray in here and like kind of rounded so it's easier to get stuff out. So what I've done is I took a really clean, nice piece of 2x4 and cut it to the shape that'll fit down inside here. And then I'm going to run across a cove bit on the router table, multiple passes this way, multiple passes this way, to open up a groove in the or a channel in this to hold pencils and whatever. So I'm going to get started with that. Noisy stuff, using the router. Of course, there'll be multiple passes, raising the bit after each pass. Got to take a little bit more off, just a touch. And there we go, perfect fit. Now I can glue this in. Oh, there you go. Oh, this nice little pencil tray, curved, so it's easy to get things in and out. I know it's a little thing, but it's the little details that really matter. Next, of course, the top. Get that fitted on top of it, and I still don't know what kind of hinges I'm going to use for this. Yeah, that way. So, yeah, I've got it cut to just about the length. As some of you may have figured out, I'm probably going to have to bolster this end here and bolster up here for screws, because this is 1/4" stock after all. But if I have to put a bolster up here, a piece of extra stock, I can turn that into a design element. So far, we're looking pretty good. I gave myself a little extra down here in case I need to trim it again. But I think we're about ready to decide on a hinge system for this and then put a finish on it. Okay, so I've got the hinges on. I had to put bolster in here and a bolster in here because of the screws. People watching me build this probably figured that out because I'm using 1/4" stock. I wanted 1/4" stock for a little bit more elegance. So I also removed the clip from the old board. I've drilled the holes here, and this is going to be mounted in with machine screws and washers and nuts behind. So basically that's all I have to do. Maybe do a little bit of trimming down here, take this down a little bit, and put in the magnets for, if I do, I might not even put the magnets in it, but put in the magnets to hold it closed when I'm not using it, or when it's sitting over here doing nothing. All right, let me get busy on that stuff. So now for the finish. I'm using Watco wipe-on polyurethane. I really like the wipe-on finishes. They're easy to use, there's not a lot of brush cleanup afterwards, and they really leave a nice finish. This is a satin. You can rub all around it. This is a satin polyurethane. I'll put 2 coats of this on both pieces, and I did in fact decide to go ahead and finish the inside of it as well, so it's all finished all the way around. Got little pointy things to hold it up off the bench. It's a bit cheaper than a bench cookies. So I'll let this dry overnight, and we'll continue on with the project tomorrow or the next day after this is completely cured. When I first put the hinges in place and I closed the lid, it turns out that the lid was standing a little taller than I like. Yeah, I should have done this in the first place. What I'm doing now is I'm going to inlet the hinges into the top and the box. I'm screwing in the hinges right now. I'll trace them with a marking knife. That'll give me a good crisp line in order to to run the router up against. I'm going to freehand routing with a trim router and a 1/4-inch bit to remove the bulk of the material from the inletting. There I am. I mark it nice and tight, and that gives, like I said, it gives you a nice crisp line and also a place to get your chisels in, and it gives you a really clean installation of the hinges when you go ahead and inlet them. So there I am freehand routing out the bulk of the material. Now, a lot of people are intimidated by freehand routing. It just takes a little bit of practice. The router bit was adjusted using the hinge as the depth, and then you take your time, take it slowly, and route out the bulk of the material. And as you saw, I took out the remainder with chisels. Now, here I'm installing the clip that I got from the old board. Clipboard, long screws because I have to screw this down tight, and it had a little warp in it. Then a washer and a nut, and then I tighten those down, and then, as you'll see, I shave the screws off when I'm done. Well, it's done. I now have my little box / clipboard, and as you can see, perfect for a piece of paper. I can put a pad on here, and you open it up. Paper fits in there very nicely, and the tray for pencils, pens, and whatever. I even got enough room here to put in my moisture meter when I go to the lumber yard. Anyhow, I'm happy with the way it came out. As you saw in the previous segment, I did in fact inlet the hinges because it was looking kind of standoffish. Decided not to, like I said, I decided not to put the magnets in for now. I may do it later, but right now it doesn't seem like it needs them, unless I throw it across the room. So that being said, see you later, and make great things out of wood.